be talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Sunday night edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. We are going live as the late window in the NFL goes final. So hopefully everybody come on in. We'll talk. Well, if something crazy in the NFL happens, we will talk about it here on the show. But today the focus is college football. Week 4 is in the books, and we got ourselves what I think is a really fun show. And what's fun about college football, you just never know where the storylines are going to come from. We'll open with Tennessee. They're awesome. But I think they proved one big thing on Saturday. Oklahoma, what are they going to do at the quarterback position? We will discuss that. From there, the thriller in Boulder. Colorado gets the win. I got takes. And I think, we need to start giving Deion credit for something that I don't think he is getting enough credit for. We'll wrap whipping around the rest of a busy weekend in college football. We'll talk a little bit about all sorts of things. Clemson looks awesome. Arch Manning, we'll see. It was okay, but he wasn't great. That Michigan USC game. And then I do want to wrap with the Hugh Freeze commentary after the Arkansas game. I don't want to spoil the ending. I think the internet is overreacting like the internet often does. I don't see the frustration. I don't get it. But that's what we all got. That's what we got on tap today. Drop your comments in. Drop your thoughts in. What are your biggest takeaways from week 4 of the college football season? I want to see them in the comments section. We will get to your comments at the end of the show. Before we get started, by the way, a couple quick announcements. First of all, make sure you're subscribed, as always, to the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel on podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We are available. And then YouTube. So happy with the growth of this channel. We're closing in on 44,000 subscribers. I think we can easily get to 50 before the end of probably October. Can't do it without your support. If you enjoy this channel, make sure you're subscribed. By the way, tag a friend, tell a friend. If you love college football, if you love college basketball, we're full speed ahead. Clips every day, full shows, all that good stuff. Also, before we get started, do want to welcome back one of our new partners. Just an absolute pleasure working with Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com, okay? So I've told you the story, but it's football season. You're on the couch all day Saturday. You're on the couch all day Sunday. And when you are on that couch, listen, if you're like me, maybe there's another chin or two growing in this time of year. And the bottom line is you're looking for something that's healthy, that tastes good, that you can eat without packing on the pounds when you're on the couch for 12 hours a day all weekend long. That's where Collie Puffs comes in. Started by a family not far from where I live, and the simple thought process was, how do we make something healthy yet delicious for both us and our kids? Every time we bring the kids to the grocery store, every time they come home from school, they're sprinting to that snack aisle, finding the most unhealthy thing that they could possibly find. That's where Collie Puffs comes in. These are chips that are baked, that are not fried. Amazing, awesome ingredients put in this. The best part is, on top of being healthy, they are also delicious as well. I've told you before, they sent us a box to the Torres household. We ripped through all of them in a matter of days, multiple flavors. You're going to love them. You can find out more and order your first box. ColliePuffs.com, also available on Amazon.com. Not sure if you heard of it, but if you're ordering whatever, gear, merchandise, stuff for the house, Collie Puffs also available on Amazon. Just search from there, throw them in the cart. They'll be delivered right to the house with the rest of your Amazon order. Thank you to Collie Puffs. So excited to be working with them, and so excited for you guys and girls to find out more. With that said, it was an insane Saturday of college football. There is no more time to waste, so let's get to it. Let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, while it was a wild Saturday across the sport, I want to start where you'd expect your boy Torres to start here on a Sunday night after an awesome week 4. That is Norman, Oklahoma, Tennessee facing Oklahoma in a game that we all know the stakes, right? Josh Heupel's return, Oklahoma's first SEC game. So much. What would possibly happen when these two teams took the field? Well, bluntly, what happened is exactly what we told you would happen in our preview show last Wednesday. I told you I'd like Tennessee to win and cover, but the best bet to me was the under because I felt like Tennessee was going to show that they are not just a great offense, but a complete team. And that's exactly what happened as they win 25-15. So let's go ahead and break this down. Let's start from the Tennessee perspective. And listen, I'm not sitting here trying to take all sorts of victory laps. Okay? I get all sorts of stuff wrong. I'm the dummy that picked USC to win at Michigan. Okay, I get stuff wrong all the time. But what I told you coming into this game, and I've said it since the NC State game, I said if you believe that Tennessee is just this team that wants to throw the ball 50 times a game and beat you 47, that's 49, 41, 49, 42, you're a casual. That was 2 or 3 years ago. Hendon Hooker, they didn't have the O-line. They didn't have the defense. And I have said from the beginning, this is a complete team. Well, what happened Saturday? Jump out to a field goal lead. It's 3-3. Nico hits that pass over the middle to Dante Thornton. They take that 10-3 lead. And then all of a sudden, you watch that game, there was never a moment the rest of the game that you felt like Oklahoma was in it. Now, part of it was some Oklahoma quarterback issues, which we'll get to, but so much of it was this Tennessee defense. And you look at this Tennessee defense, they are phenomenal. The crazy part is we talked about it going into the game. They've basically been playing base defense the first 3 games, and they have still completely dominated the opposition. But it doesn't change the fact that this team is special and that on the biggest stage that they have had all year, they showed again that they are a complete team. Nico, 13 of 21 passing, 194 yards, 1 touchdown. We're going to get back to Nico in a minute. They ran the ball effectively, which we talked about. They do it as well as anybody in the SEC, 150 yards rushing. To Oklahoma's credit, their defense actually played pretty well, all things considered. But the story of this game was the defense. We talked on Friday's show, Josh Heupel, remember, he had that great quote after the NC State game where he said, look, I like putting up points as much as anybody, but at the end of the day, we are Tennessee football. We're the home of Eric Berry. We're the home of Reggie White. We're the home of Al Wilson. We take pride in our defense here, and they showed it on Saturday. Oklahoma didn't find the red zone, didn't find the end zone, until there was 8 minutes left on the clock. They didn't break 200 yards until well into the fourth quarter. A dominant win, a complete win for Tennessee. And when I look at Tennessee in the bigger picture, there are 2 things that stand out to me that we absolutely need to talk about, okay? The first one, and this is going to sound crazy, and Tennessee fans, I want you to hear me out before you start yelling and screaming and telling me I don't know what I'm talking about. But I feel like, as crazy as it sounds, that this Tennessee team has another level to get to as a team this specific season. Now, that's not an insult, but have you noticed Josh Heupel knows how good his defense is, knows how good his run game is, and I don't even believe that he has really let Nico loose yet this year. Nico on Saturday night, as I said, 13 of 21 passing, 194 yards, 1 touchdown. It was an awesome performance, but it wasn't Nico's best, and that's not a criticism of Nico. That is a head coach realizing I can run the ball right down this team's throat. I trust my defense. I don't have to let this kid loose yet. And as a matter of fact, that's not just my opinion that he hasn't really let Nico loose yet. It's the facts. I looked this up, and this stat kind of blew me away. Through 4 games, Nico has only attempted 88 total passes, okay? Now, that might sound like a lot to you, but let's do some simple mental math. Through 4 games, that is a total of about 22 passes per game. This is not the offense that everybody thinks it is. They don't have to throw the ball 50 times a game. And at some point, they might. And at some point, I think this offense, again, has another level to go to. He's only throwing the ball 22 times per game. Oh, by the way, and this is important, I looked it up. He's 80th right now in pass attempts in college football. They are nowhere near fully unleashing this kid, nor should they be. He's 5 games into his career as a starter, and there's another level to get to with this kid. Beyond that, I'll be honest. I look at that schedule that Tennessee has. I think there are a lot of wins left on this schedule. And in my opinion, they are absolutely in the short conversation of national championship contenders in college football this year. Okay. And I was thinking about this, is that you look at Tennessee right now, and let me ask a simple question. Look at everybody else in college football. Okay. Texas to me, and this is not a criticism of Tennessee, but Texas to me has been the best team that I have seen in college football this year, okay? Doesn't mean Tennessee's not good, doesn't mean this team's not good, doesn't mean that team's not good. But at the same time, Texas, first of all, is not invincible. We'll see what happens with Quinn Ewers. But at the same time, after Texas, like, who are we certain about in college football outside of Tennessee? Like, if Texas is in that upper tier, who else is there with them? Georgia it was the preseason number 1 team. They were my preseason national championship pick. So this is not me criticizing Georgia, but here's the question. Like, have we seen anything from Georgia that makes you feel like they are an invincible team? Not yet. They go to Tuscaloosa this weekend. We'll talk about that game throughout the week, but no, there is nothing that I have seen that makes Georgia look invincible to me. Ohio State, haven't played anybody. Sorry, don't know how to react to a great win against Marshall. Think Ohio State is good. Love what Chip Kelly's doing early, but they don't look invincible. They don't look unbeatable. Marshall drove the length of the field in the first drive of the game. Who else? Bama, we're going to find out about. I like Miami, but do we really trust Mario Cristobal to win 3-4 straight games on neutral fields, out of conference, etc., equal talent? I don't know. And so I just bring it up because this Tennessee thing, man, listen, I don't know how many teams are in that upper tier, but there have to be, there aren't any outside of Texas that you feel any better about than Tennessee. Producer Matt, do we have the Tennessee schedule really quick? If we don't, it's cool, but if you have it up, pop it. Look at this schedule. Producer Matt laid it out perfectly. They're 4-0. They have a bye. They go to Arkansas. That game's not going to be easy. Arkansas is tough. Arkansas is physical, whatever. You get Florida at home. Listen, this team, first of all, I think we can just look at this schedule, and you don't want to put the cart before the horse. But 10-2, listen, this is a new era of college football, okay? 10-2, with this schedule will get you into the playoff. I don't care if NC State stinks. You challenge yourself out of conference. You won at Oklahoma. Now you got to go to Georgia late in the year, but you get Bama at home. And so I'm looking at this team. Listen, I don't want to say anything that's going to jinx anything because there is still a lot of football left to be played. But if they just play to their capabilities, they're in that college football playoff, and they are a team that is capable of winning that thing. And I think right now a worst case scenario is 10-2. Again, you get Alabama at home. That is a terrifying place to play. Just ask out all the Alabama players that came there 2 years ago. So I look at Tennessee, great win. But as I said, I just think they are just now scratching the surface of their potential. Phenomenal victory. And I think if you're Tennessee, the best is yet to come. And whatever that short list of true national championship contenders are, that short list of teams that are good enough to win 3 or 4 neutral site and potentially home or road playoff games, Tennessee is on that list. Very quickly, let's switch to the Oklahoma side of things. Oklahoma losing this game 25-15. But listen, first of all, I'm on Fox Sports Radio every Saturday night. I'm not saying it as a humble brag, but sometimes you get lost in the sauce and you're following a million things and whatever. But as this game went final, I just saw some insane takes on Oklahoma that I just fundamentally disagree with. Okay. Oklahoma loses 25-15. I know it wasn't close. Oklahoma scored their points all in the 12 of their 15 in the fourth quarter, only 2 touchdowns, whatever. But I saw these crazy takes of, they're not ready for the SEC. It's embarrassing. Brent Venables isn't the guy. And I'm like, and by the way, credit Oklahoma fans. I didn't see that from Oklahoma fans. I saw that from some other SEC fan bases. They're in over their heads, whatever. And I was sitting there saying, like, did I just watch the same game that everybody else did? Because in my opinion, I think Oklahoma is further along in a lot of places than maybe I thought they would even be at this point. I think they're better in certain places than people are giving them credit for. And I think they have 1 to 2 really big issues that we absolutely have to discuss that need to get solved if they want to get to the upper level of this league. First off, let's credit Brent Venables, okay? I know on a day like today, you don't want to credit him, but let's remember how awful this defense was when he took over. It took 3 off seasons, but one of my biggest takeaways was in that game, Oklahoma has an SEC defense. They went from having a Mountain West defense, having a FCS defense in 21 or whatever it was. They got dudes all over the field that are as good as anybody in this conference. We knew that coming in. We talked about it. They were leading the SEC in sacks coming into this game, second in TFLs. And so I bring it up because we knew they had dudes, but it's one thing to do it against Houston. It's one thing to do it against whoever. I saw that defense. I was like, that defense is really good. It's ironic because for years, the offense was unstoppable and the defense couldn't stop anybody. But that defense is right there. So don't tell me they're not even competitive because I just fundamentally disagree. That defense has the chance to be really good. Now, the problem with the defense, they need a little bit of help from the offense. And even, by the way, with the offense isn't broken. As a matter of fact, we're just talking about Oklahoma has SEC caliber dudes all over the defense. Oklahoma also has SEC caliber dudes all over the skill positions. The Deion Burks kid is elite, not just on Saturday night, but all season long. Nick Anderson, who was not available, is elite. When and if he comes back, he's going to be very good. The Taylor Tatum kid, running back, good. The problem for Texas A&M, I don't know where that came from. Texas A&M played Bowling Green, not involved in this conversation. The problem for Oklahoma is 2 things, one that we knew was coming and one that we certainly didn't. The 2 big problems, the O-line right now is a mess, and the quarterback room is a mess. Certainly didn't expect that one. As far as the O-line is concerned, listen, it's hard for me to get mad about a problem that we already knew was a problem, right? Like if you move into a house and they do the inspection and you got asbestos in the wall, okay, you can't then make a bid on the house, buy the house, move in and say, oh my God, this is asbestos. What the heck? What are we talking about? It's like, no, you knew that coming in, and we knew this year was going to be a rebuilt offensive line. 5 new starters, couple injuries. You have backups on backups playing, and we knew this was going to be an issue. Now, what we didn't know was what the heck was going on with the quarterback room. But I'll also say even the quarterback situation is kind of more interesting to me and even a little bit different than it felt, midway through the second quarter when Tennessee was pulling away. Because to me, if this game, let's just say hypothetically, had ended in the third quarter, there's rain, thunder, lightning, they have to call off the game in the third quarter. The conversation is Jackson Arnold versus Dylan Gabriel. Now it is obviously the exact opposite. It is Jackson Arnold versus Michael Hawkins Jr., his replacement. As far as the Dylan Gabriel thing is concerned, listen, it's been already beaten to death, I feel like, but it is worth noting at least very quickly, okay? Dylan Gabriel was the starter on this team. They won 10 games a year ago. And it was kind of the quintessential NIL portal era problem. Dylan Gabriel didn't get the draft feedback that he wanted, decided he wanted to play another year of college football. Oklahoma had this 5-star waiting in the wings named Jackson Arnold. And basically all sides said, you know what, Dylan, we wish you luck. This is Jackson's team now. Now, depending on what report you read or who you ask, Dylan Gabriel said he voluntarily left, that he didn't want to hold Jackson Arnold back. But then there's other interviews where it's like, it's pretty obvious he kind of got forced out of the program because they wanted to bring on the 5-star. But at the same time, I understand the situation. This is the portal NIL world. And there aren't very many Arch Mannings out there that are willing to sit and be a backup for 2 full years before being a starter. And so do you keep Dylan Gabriel? You keep him for this year, but you lose Jackson Arnold, who you're hoping is going to be your starter in 2024 and 2025. Or do you go with Dylan Gabriel, who is, going to be gone after a year? So they went with Jackson Arnold, but also, I'm pretty for Jackson Arnold because in this game, he just looked so lost. 7 of 16 passing, 54 yards, a couple turnovers. It was just a debacle, okay? So that's the first part of the conversation. You chose Jackson Arnold over Dylan Gabriel. I disagree with it, but whatever. But now the more interesting part is what happened after they benched Jackson Arnold, which was shocking to me. I figured they were going to roll with him, whatever. And they bring in this Michael Hawkins Jr. kid who, listen, I'm not calling him, Brett Favre or Michael Vick here, but he could at least do some things. Finishes the game 11 of 18 passing, 1 passing touchdown, rushes for 22 yards. Now, some of it, there's some adjusted rushing yards because of sacks, but it's really interesting because if you look at the comparison of the two, it's not even a question of who was the better quarterback on Saturday night. Producer Matt, you could pop up the actual statistics if you have them. There you go. Michael Hawkins, as I said, 11 of 18 passing. Jackson Arnold, 7 of 16 passing, on nearly 3 times as many passing yards for Michael Hawkins. But what's more interesting is, to me, what Brent Venables does next. Because Brent Venables, after the game, basically said, look, we're going to play it by ear. There's no rush. We're not making any final decisions. He says right here, you got a lot of football in front of us. We've got improvement to make. That all goes without saying. But he was not committed to Michael Hawkins, which I'll just be transparent. Maybe you guys and girls disagree. I think there is no doubt in my mind that's just a major mistake. Because I look at this team, first of all, there's just a couple reasons that I would go with Michael Hawkins. I don't agree that Jackson Arnold should just have the job because he's a 5-star. Wasn't better than Dylan Gabriel last year. Wasn't better than Michael Hawkins, at least on Saturday. And so when I look at the situation in Oklahoma, I know Venables was non-committal. I think it's actually a no-brainer. I think you got to go with Michael Hawkins for 2 reasons. One, when you have a shaky O-line, listen, I'm not Nick Saban, okay? I'm not Kirby Smart, not Josh Heupel. But when you have a shaky O-line, what is the best thing you can have at the quarterback situation? A dude that can make plays with his legs. Venables talked about that after the game, made some plays outside of the pocket. So that's one, that's obvious. But 2, you look at the Oklahoma schedule, there are wins to be had on this schedule. Again, this is part of the stuff that I saw people talking about on Saturday night. I'm like, were you guys watching the same game as me? The defense was lights out. Now, you just got to get the offense playing at like a C plus B minus level. You're going to win some games. Listen, you're going to Auburn last week. Sorry, Producer Matt. Producer Matt, our producer, Auburn alum, Auburn grad, was at the Auburn-Arkansas game on Saturday. We'll discuss Auburn-Arkansas at the end of the show, or later in the show, I should say. But Auburn is a very winnable game if you get B-minus quarterback play from your quarterback. That's all you need, not A+. With that defense, you just need B-minus quarterback play. By the way, you have Maine on the schedule later in the year. But look at everybody else on this schedule. I'm sorry, LSU doesn't look invincible. UCLA had them on the ropes in that game. It was tied at halftime. LSU is not invincible. Missouri almost lost at home to Vanderbilt. So all those losses, all those games that look like potential losses, now they can be potential wins. But I don't think you have to go back to Jackson. Like, I'm sorry. If he's a 5-star and you spent a bunch of money on NIL with him, this is the game that we play. This is the world that we live in. And if the other guy is better, you got to play him. I think, to me, it's a no-brainer. I'm fascinated to see what Brent Venables does. But I would also say I don't think this Oklahoma thing is as off the rails as people think. Defense is special. Skill position guys are really good. O-line isn't good, and you have to coach around that. And so we'll see what happens. It's Sunday night. Maybe by the time you listen to this, something will have happened. But in my opinion, I think it's a no-brainer. I think you start Michael Hawkins. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, by the way, drop your questions in the freaking chat, would you? Questions, comments, thoughts. We'll get to all of them at the end of the show. For now, though, we'll take a quick break, come back, talk a little bit about that thrilling Colorado game. We're going to talk a little bit about USC Michigan, and we will also talk about Hugh Freeze, who had a lot to say after the Arkansas game. Did he cross the line? Quick break. Be right back. Before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at AaronTorresOnline.com. hopeandpope.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Mora Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rensselaer Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So do want to go ahead and keep the college football conversation going again. Drop your questions and comments in the comment section. We will get to Arkansas, Auburn, and a bunch of the other big games. Appreciate everybody joining us on a Sunday night. I do want to switch gears. And one thing I got to say about college football that I love is that we go into every single week thinking that we know what the storylines are. This week, it felt like Michigan, USC, Tennessee, Oklahoma. Those were the big games. We're going to spend so much time talking about them. We obviously spent a lot of time talking Tennessee and Oklahoma. USC and Michigan is going to have to take a back seat, a back burner, because we had an absolute thriller in Boulder, Colorado, okay? By now, we all know how it finished. Colorado, by the way, hosting Baylor, Big 12 opener for both teams. Baylor coming in with a 2-1 record, lost to Utah, but overall they've been playing pretty well. That pass defense has been really good. Baylor, by the way, has a 7-point lead, a touchdown lead with 2 seconds to go. On the Fox broadcast, they started playing the Cordell Stewart to Michael Westbrook video from 1994 or whatever it was. Shedeur Sanders, 2 seconds left, drops back, and this is what happened.
Gets the feet set toward the end zone for the game. It is caught by Wester, just like 1994.
Unbelievable finish. That is right. If you missed it, and I don't know how you possibly could have, but Colorado trailing by 7 points with 2 seconds to go. Shedeur Sanders throws it up. LeJontay Wester makes the catch. They force overtime. And then somehow, in maybe even more of an incredible twist, in overtime, Colorado scores first. Baylor gets the ball back. Baylor lunges for the end zone. And none other than Travis Hunter is the one that forces the fumble. Colorado survives. Colorado wins maybe the most entertaining game we've had all year, 38-31. I just got one question for you, baby. Do you believe? Because I believe, listen, I know I'm overselling it, but I love this win for Colorado. And to me, it actually says a couple things about the Buffs, okay? First off, I'm just going to say it. Talking Heisman in September is stupid, okay? At the same time, I don't know how Travis Hunter cannot be your Heisman Trophy favorite as of today, this second, as we speak. Do you know that on Saturday, he became the first Colorado wide receiver in school history? This is a school that has produced first-round draft picks with 5 straight 100-yard receiving games, okay? This on top of being the best cornerback in college football. He is, in my opinion, the best wide receiver that I've seen so far in college football. It's no different than Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani just passed 50-50 in a year where he also could be the best pitcher if he wasn't hurt all the time. And so it's unbelievable. And again, I know it's silly to talk Heisman, but you know, if Colorado is in the mix late, I'm not talking about in the mix for a national championship. I'm talking about 8-4, 9-3, 7-5. He is putting up so many highlights. he's going to be in the conversation. Okay. And by the way, like you want a quick history lesson. What he is doing isn't just, it's literally unprecedented. Okay. Because everyone wants to compare it to the Charles Woodson year and all that good stuff. For fun, I went back and looked it up. And if you're old enough to remember the Charles Woodson era, and I'm a little bit young, but at the same time, that Charles Woodson year, he was really an elite corner, an elite special teams guy that they occasionally put out to play wide receiver. And so I went back and looked it up. You know, Charles Woodson in his Heisman Trophy year had 11 catches all season long. So he's remembered as this historic two-way player. Travis Hunter had 13 catches last week alone, 37 catches through 4 games. He is the best wide receiver that I've seen in college football this year. To me, he is the Heisman Trophy frontrunner right now. Now, you finish 4-8, won't happen. Quinn Ewers comes back and leads Texas to an undefeated regular season, might not happen. Will Howard, whatever. There's a lot to be played, but Travis Hunter has been unbelievable. Again, a cornerback that people are afraid to throw to on one side, still has a pick, by the way, and then has 37 catches, first player in Colorado history with 5 straight 100-yard receiving games. Beyond that, can we take a second? And this is where everyone's going to get mad, and everyone's going to turn off the live stream, and everyone's going to get all offended. Can we take a second to appreciate what Coach Prime is doing at Colorado? Okay, because I was thinking about this after the game. I understand that for a lot of you, you don't like Coach Prime. I understand that some of you, he talks too much and the players talk too much and they went 4-8 last year and he talks too much. Well, you know what? Here's the bottom line. I don't care about the talking. I care about the results on the field. And I think what he is quietly doing at Colorado, quietly from a win-loss perspective, needs to be talked about more. That might sound crazy. Call me crazy. I don't really care. This is a guy that took over quite literally the worst Power 5 program in college football 2 seasons ago. That's not even debatable. They were 1-11, but it wasn't just being 1-11. They were losing games by 30 and 40 points that season. I'm not going to go back. I've done the whole thing where you go back and you read all the final stat sheets, whatever. So last year, yes, 4-8 was an improvement. And they are now 3-1 and 1-0 in the Big 12. Now, did they need an incredible play to get to 1-0? Sure, but I could flip it the other way. They outgained Baylor. Baylor had a punt return for a touchdown or a kickoff return for a touchdown. If they don't return that kick, we don't need the Shedeur Sanders pass. But this guy, listen, Deion said this, Coach Prime said this at Big 12 Media Days. He said, I am judged on a different basis than everybody else in college football. And I think he is onto something. I think he is dead right about what he said. He is judged differently than everybody else. 4-8 last year should have been a celebration. Instead, most people criticized him and he's overrated and he's this and he's that and he stinks. Listen, season didn't end the way anybody wanted, but 4-8 is by definition, 400% improvement over the previous season. They're 3-1 right now. This is incredible. By the way, sold out crowd. I thought about this. 4 straight primetime game. So you talk about a guy that is having impact on college football, even after a 4-8 year. 4th different primetime game. How about this? On 4 different networks. Week 1, North Dakota State, ESPN. Week 2, Nebraska, NBC. Week 3, Colorado State, CBS. Week 4, Baylor on Fox. 4 different networks put this team in primetime. And so I look at this team. I think what Deion is doing is incredible. I think we need to appreciate it. And I'm going to take it a step further. People are going to criticize, make fun of me. I think this team is better than people realize, and I think they are going to win a lot of games this season. When you look at the schedule, now I'll be honest, this game this coming weekend against UCF, Gus Malzahn, KJ Jefferson, in my opinion, is maybe the toughest game. I don't want to say it's the toughest, but it is one of the tougher games left on the schedule, okay? You look at the schedule that they have. They have UCF this coming weekend. I saw that they are a significant underdog. And you look at the schedule UCF is going to be a tough game. I'm not going to undersell it. But look at everybody else that Colorado has to play, because we thought of the Big 12 was going to be this crazy, wacky, weird conference. And it is. There's not a lot of margin between these teams. And so when I see this Colorado schedule, I don't see a team that's going to get embarrassed. Like I see, by the way, after Central Florida, you get a bye, then you play Kansas State. Kansas State just got embarrassed at BYU. By the way, BYU, altitude, might be cold weather. There's a lot of similarities between BYU and Colorado. That game is at Colorado, by the way. Arizona, listen, I was as big of an Arizona football supporter as there was last year. Jed Fish didn't love the way that he left. But right now, they're not stopping anybody, okay? Kansas State ran all over them, and a week later, BYU ran all over Kansas State. You have Kansas later in the year, a team that was preseason top 25. They already have 3 losses. Oklahoma State at home, to me, is not unbeatable. So I look at this schedule like, yeah, Utah is really tough. I'm not going to lie. They looked awesome without Cam Rising, which is another conversation we might have to get to by the end of the show. Cincinnati's not unbeatable. Arizona's not unbeatable. You just beat Baylor. Kansas State's not unbeatable. And so to me, I think this team might be better than people think. The defense is much improved. The run game is much improved. It's worth noting this was the second straight game where they were able to run the football effectively. Remember, a week ago against Colorado State was really the first time that they were able to run the football all season long, really the entire Deion Sanders era. And on top of that, on Saturday night, they finished with right around 100 yards rushing in that game against Baylor. Wasn't perfect, but it's also worth noting, by the way, Baylor had the number 1 pass defense in college football coming into this game. Shedeur finished with 341 yards passing and a couple touchdowns. And so when I look at this team, one, we need to appreciate what Coach Prime is doing. Full crowds, people care. This is from where things were to where things are. It's like night and day. Okay, not every program has to be Georgia and compete for a national championship every single year. Not every program has to be Alabama or Ohio State. But from where they were the day before they hired Coach Prime to where they are now, I don't think there's a bigger gap between that 2-year stretch at any program than Colorado. So I'm fascinated to see how this thing plays out. The defense, to their credit, has been playing better. By the way, it's worth noting, everyone's going to say, oh, they got lucky to win. Okay. Baylor had 100 yards less of total offense than Colorado did. Again, if they don't return a punt or a kickoff for a touchdown, Colorado doesn't have to make that big play. So I'm excited to see, but this team is so fun. And if you can't enjoy it, I'm sorry, because I am enjoying the heck out of it. I asked you off the top, I said, do you believe? Because Torres believes, baby. I love this Colorado story. And I can't wait. I'm ready for next week already as they get set to play Central Florida Saturday afternoon. That's the big noon. By the way, it's not a noon kickoff, but big noon will be there. Shows you the impact that Colorado has. Really quickly, those are the big stories from across college football. Let's get to some of the other ones. And I really like the pacing of last Sunday's show, so I'll try to be a little bit quicker on this one. Michigan versus USC was one that I assumed we were going to spend a lot of time talking about. I don't know that there's like an amazing takeaway from this game. USC early got beat up. By the way, this is another game. We ironically, of all teams, talked about it with Oklahoma a minute ago, right? I said I felt like I was watching a different game with Oklahoma than everybody else who covers college football because I saw, Venables, what is he doing? And it was kind of the same with USC and Lincoln Riley. Yes, in the first half, USC got pushed around. And there was a lot of, is this kind of the same USC team from a year ago? And then in the second half, USC was awesome and largely dominated that second half. Now, I'm not trying to take anything away from Michigan, but let's call a spade here. He had a big first run early in the game. I think it was Donovan Edwards had the first one? Yeah, 40. No, it was Khalil Mullings, who had the first run, 53 yards in the first quarter. Donovan Edwards had the second big run, but after trailing 14-3 at the half, USC outscored Michigan. USC held them without a first down for most of the third quarter. Oh, by the way, Miller Moss throws a pick six, and USC still, with under 5 minutes ago, had a chance to beat Michigan in the Big House. By the way, 3rd and 1. You stop Mullings on that run, you force a fourth down, and there's a chance that they're punting away, trying to use their timeouts to get the ball back. You have them on the goal line. You stop them there, game's over. So, again, I see this craziness. From the USC perspective, you know what I see? I see, and this is the new world of college football that we have to accept. Not every game is a cataclysmic indictment on everybody. When I see USC, I see a team that, like, they host Wisconsin this week. I think they're going to beat the brakes off of Wisconsin. Oh, by the way, like, I'm sorry, but if you are in the big house, you throw a pick six and you're one play away from basically getting the ball back with a chance to potentially run out the clock. I'm sorry. I think you're going to be okay against Penn State at home in a few weeks when you host Penn State. I think you're going to be okay against Notre Dame when you play them at home. Nebraska at home they'll all be competitive, but this idea that this somehow proved that, oh, USC, they can't play in the Big Ten. It's like they were on the road against the defending national champions and had them on the ropes. And credit Michigan. By the way, I don't want this to be a negative anti-Michigan take because Michigan made the plays when they needed to. I thought Michigan was the more deserving team, and I thought Michigan deserved to win that game. But I don't think that's a game that Michigan fans come out of it feeling like, oh my God, we've solved all our problems. No, it's kind of the opposite. At least you kind of know who you are, and you know that Alex Orji probably isn't a guy that's going to throw the ball 30 times a game. Now you can focus on what you do well. Kind of like Jalen Milroe in Alabama a year ago, to be perfectly honest. So great win for Michigan. They deserve the credit, but I saw this like anti-Lincoln Riley sentiment, and I was like, I don't get it, okay? So Michigan wins. Let's quickly rip through some of the other games. Listen, team that deserves some credit. And maybe, it's because I had them as one of my best bets this week. Maybe it's because I had them as the 11 seed in my playoff. Can we take half a second to acknowledge that, like, Clemson might have actually turned a corner? And I was critical of Clemson, to be abundantly clear. I was critical of Clemson after that Georgia game. Oh my God, they needed to take the portal. They needed to add depth. They needed to do this. They needed to do that. But I noticed the week after the Georgia game, they put up 66 points against App State. And I know App State might just stink. But on Saturday, 59 points against NC State. And to be perfectly honest, this game at one point going into the fourth quarter was 59-14 before NC State put up 21 unanswered points. And so when I look at Clemson, listen, this is the fun part of a 12-team playoff era. You get destroyed by Georgia, it doesn't matter. You just got to get better every week. You're better than the competition. By the way, Clemson does not play Miami in the regular season. Miami with a very nice win over South Florida. But you look at Clemson. They play Stanford this week. Then they go to Florida State. Wake Forest is terrible. Virginia is not very good. You do have Louisville later in the year, but that game's at home. But like I look at this Clemson team, they're getting better week over week over week. Klubnik actually looks confident in that offense. And so you start talking about teams that we all wrote off in week one, and in previous years, maybe it wouldn't have mattered and they wouldn't have made the playoff and they would have been out of the conversation. This team just needs to keep getting better, and I think they're going to be okay. Big picture. Two other games. First of all, this one I'm not going to spend virtually any time on, but I just want to give half a second of credit to the Utah Utes. You go on the road. You beat Oklahoma State with a true freshman quarterback, Isaac Wilson. Credit to him. He gets the win. Kyle Whittingham is just that dude, man. Like, and why that win is so important is because this is a 12-team playoff era where the Big 12 almost certainly will get an automatic bid. It's not promised, but they're probably going to get an automatic bid and almost certainly get a first-round bye. And so we just talked about the Big 12 with Colorado, but at the same time, Utah wins this game. Remember, they have no Kansas State if you think Kansas State is one of the better teams in this league. We just talked about Arizona, which is struggling. Arizona actually comes to Utah this coming weekend. Iowa State later in the year. But listen, you just got to get to that Big 12 championship game and win that Big 12 championship game. And by the way, if you're 11-1, 12-0, you might not even have to win once you get there. But that is a win. Kyle Whittingham and his staff just deserve so much freaking credit, man. That was an incredible victory on the road against Oklahoma State. And then from the Oklahoma State perspective, I think the opposite is true of them as well. Just get better, get back to that Big 12 championship game, and you'll be just fine. But I think we have to give credit where it's due when it comes to Utah. Really quickly, one other story before I do want to wrap with the Hugh Freeze stuff, but I think there is one narrative that we can pretty much officially put to bed here. I don't think there's a quarterback controversy at Texas. I'll be perfectly honest, guys and girls. the Arch Manning stuff, listen, we talked about it on this show. There is no, there is no shame in whatever. But we talked about it last week. I said, look, when Quinn Ewers comes back, he is going to be the starting quarterback. This isn't a conversation that anybody needs to have. It's fun. It's Arch. I get it. Well, I bring it up because Arch Manning, not sure if you saw the first start of the Arch Manning era. Wasn't terrible, but 15 of 29 passing, 258 yards, 51% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I think it is safe to say that we probably do not have to worry too much about an Arch Manning Quinn Ewers quarterback controversy. Now, let's also call a spade here, okay? I don't think that Quinn Ewers is going to be starting this week, okay? That is going to be a conversation, and if Arch gets the starting spot, if Arch is deemed the starter this week, people are going to talk about it. But as I've said from the beginning, oblique injuries, which is what Quinn Ewers have, they're serious, they're painful, and they're the type of thing, if you don't give it time, it only takes one little weird movement where you think you're 100% and you're back to square one. And so you beat UL Monroe, you play Mississippi State, which is the worst team in the SEC because they got embarrassed by Florida. They're now down to the backup quarterback. You don't need to play Quinn Ewers. And so I don't think he's starting this week. Give him an extra week to prepare for Oklahoma. You would have now 3 weeks off going into that Oklahoma game. By the way, if for some reason he's not ready against Oklahoma, don't play him. It's a 12-team playoff era. Get to the SEC championship game, win that puppy. It doesn't freaking matter. But Arch Manning, there is no quarterback controversy. When Quinn Ewers is healthy, Quinn Ewers is going to have that starting spot. All right. There is one more topic that I do want to get to. It is a game that broke my brain, and it is a story that broke the internet on Saturday night into Sunday morning. It is the Auburn Tigers, their head coach Hugh Freeze, who are coming off of a loss to Arkansas, okay? So this game, and I tweeted it right around halftime. This was at one point probably the worst football game I've ever seen, okay? It was terrible. Now, to the credit of Arkansas, they were much better in the second half. This was a game where the two teams combined for, let me make sure that I have these stats correct, okay? So the two teams in this game combined for, I know Auburn had 5 turnovers. Arkansas finished the game with only 2. So 7 turnovers. I believe there were 2 separate instances where we had back-to-back plays that resulted in turnovers. And like I said, there was a moment where I was like, this is the worst football game I've ever seen. Got better. Arkansas wins. They make plays late. Taylon Green had an incredible deep touchdown pass. But the story of the game was the continued struggles at quarterback for Auburn. If you remember, 2 weeks ago against Cal at home, Peyton Thorne, 4 interceptions thrown. Hugh Freeze asked about it after the game, says, look, he's been the best player in practice. It's not easy to replace a guy when he's showing you things in practice that aren't translating to games. And I'm paraphrasing, but that was an important part of what was said. Well, it doesn't matter because last week against New Mexico, they did go to the backup. Hank Brown, he looked good. I just one problem. Hank Brown on Saturday threw 3 interceptions, which means that he was then replaced by Peyton Thorne, who threw another interception of his own. On top of a fumble, there were 5 total interceptions, 5 total turnovers, 4 interceptions, the second game this year where there were 4 interceptions thrown by Auburn quarterbacks. Afterward, Hugh Freeze was asked about it, and he had some comments that basically broke the internet. Producer Matt, play the sound.
And I know that there's people open, and I know that we're running the football. And we got to find a guy that won't throw it to the other team. And we got to find running backs that hold on to it. You know, that's a huge play there. I mean, we're going in to score. I don't know, what was it, 7-0 then? Or so it's 7-7, and our defense gets a stop, and who knows what happens. But, you know, the scheme is what most everybody in the country is running some sort of. But you've got to have good play at quarterback for sure at whatever system you're going to choose.
So that was what Hugh Freeze said after the Arkansas game. And I think the soundbite that seems to have broken the internet was the part where he said, We have to find a quarterback that doesn't throw the ball to the other team. But of course, because the internet does not like Hugh Freeze, this was the most offensive sound, the most offensive thing that has ever been said in the history of college football. It's proof of a coach that is placing all the blame on his players, taking none of the accountability himself. Shame on Hugh Freeze. He should be banished to the high heavens. Except here's the problem. I don't really see it that way, and I'll be transparent. I don't really see what the big deal was about what Hugh Freeze said, okay? First of all, let's get one thing clear, because this always happens on the internet. Yes, that sound did not sound good. Yes, it does sound like a coach that is blaming his players for everything going wrong and taking none of the blame. Well, if you actually do your homework, and if you actually go back, and if you actually listen to the entire press conference, there were two separate instances where Hugh Freeze said, we have to coach these guys better. So don't tell me that Hugh Freeze is taking zero responsibility, because he did take responsibility. But at the same time, let me ask you a simple question. At what point is he supposed to just, like this argument that he's not supposed to throw his players under the bus? One, I don't think saying we need to find a quarterback that doesn't throw the ball to the other team is throwing your players under the bus when the quarterback is literally throwing the ball to the other team. And so to me, here's my question. What is he supposed to say when he acknowledges that the coaching has to be better? Is he supposed to lie about it? Is he supposed to pretend that everything's okay and that zero responsibility falls on the quarterbacks? Let me just give you an example. First of all, let me just give you an example, right? If you're watching on YouTube, you see a very nice Auburn graphic with a very nice picture of Hugh Freeze that producer Matt spent a lot of time this afternoon putting together. If producer Matt came on this show and we did this segment, and producer Matt had a UConn logo and a Lane Kiffin picture when we're talking about Hugh Freeze and Auburn, and I gave him the specifics and said, hey, we're talking Hugh Freeze, let's make sure this logo looks good on the final segment of the show, is it my responsibility that producer Matt put up a UConn logo and a Lane Kiffin picture? Of course not. By the way, the opposite is true as well. If I don't coach him up correctly, if I tell him put a UConn logo and a Lane Kiffin picture, and he does that, and we're talking about Hugh Freeze, that's on me. And so I just bring it up because, is he supposed to lie? Is he supposed to pretend that leading the country in interceptions is an acceptable standard for Auburn? And let me even take it a step further than that. Is he the one throwing the football? Like, listen, I understand. Yes, in a perfect world, you want to coach it out of the players, but there's only so much he can do on the sidelines. Remember, this happens to everybody. 2 or 3 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, the year Alabama started the year number 1, Bryce Young, Will Anderson, and everybody said this is a revenge tour. They're going to destroy everybody. They were like 120th in penalties that year. It was a disappointing year. They lost 3 times during the regular season, whatever, twice, I think, in the regular season. They weren't in that 14 playoff, though, okay? And at some point, like, yeah, Nick Saban can take responsibility. We got to coach him up better. But at some point, it's on the players to stop committing dumb penalties. And so I don't understand this thing that Hugh Freeze is not supposed to be transparent about what his players are or are not doing. Let me take it a step further. In the NIL portal era, I really just don't care, and I am very unsympathetic to coaches criticizing players. Now, listen, if he blamed it all on Peyton Thorne and said he's the worst quarterback I've ever seen, and Peyton Thorne threw for 300 yards and you lost on a walk-off field goal, that's different. But this is the NIL portal world. This is a world where these guys are getting paid. We've talked about it with DJU. We've talked about it with other guys. I don't know all of the dynamics of Auburn's NIL setup. Peyton Thorne is probably one of the top 3 or 4 people paid in that building in terms of salary. I know it's not a salary because you can't pay him for a performance, whatever. Peyton Thorne is making a lot of money to be the quarterback of the Auburn Tigers. And once you're a paid, it's not an employee, but you're kind of an employee, I'm very unsympathetic to guys being criticized publicly, okay? Happens in the pros all the time. Caleb Williams, I was watching him against the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday afternoon as I was prepping for this show. Threw 2 crushing picks. Now, you could blame a little bit on the play caller. You could blame a little bit on the head coach, Matt Eberflus, but you also have to blame Caleb Williams at some point. Do we not blame him? By the way, I'm from the New York City area. I grew up in Connecticut. I got a ton of friends who are Giants fans. You know when Daniel Jones sucks, who gets the blame for it? It's not Brian Dable. There's nobody running. Oh my God, Brian Dable. He was so mean to Daniel Jones. Go listen to some of the stuff Brian Dable says. He crushes him every single week. Brian Dable has said on multiple occasions, like, this guy isn't good enough to be my quarterback. That's the reality. And so to me, I'm sorry if your feelings are hurt. But guess what? Peyton Thorne's a big boy. If he wants to play in the NFL next year, if Hank Brown wants to play in the NFL, and they all do, you got to be able to deal with criticism, and you got to be able to deal with reality. Finally, let me say this, okay? Because I think there's this perception of it's Freeze's fault because they didn't pursue anybody in the portal. And if you knew these guys weren't good enough, that's on you as the head coach, okay? Well, a couple things. One, if you're not following our Torres on Auburn account, you need to be. Bottom line, I bring it up because the Torres on Auburn account brought up a great point. This is more than just a quarterback issue. But at the same time, there's a couple other variables here. First of all, Auburn did pursue a couple quarterbacks. Riley Leonard is a Alabama native. There was at least talks, would they consider him? I think he was pretty far down the road with Notre Dame. I think there might have been some early Cam Ward communication, but it's not as though they didn't at least have conversations with anybody. That's one. Two, portal quarterbacks don't come in infinite supply. This isn't bread at your grocery store. If your neighbor picks up a loaf of bread, you can just come get in line behind him and pick up another loaf of bread. There's only so many good portal quarterbacks to go around. And so to me, listen, I'm not here to be Hugh Freeze's PR, mouth here. But at the same time, it's like sometimes you want to know the truth. Taking the wrong portal quarterback is actually worse than taking one just for the sake of taking one. How mad do you think Florida State fans are right now that they're spending all this money on DJU? You go on and on down the list. I can't think of everybody. It doesn't have to be a negative DJU conversation. But it's really hard to get a guy out of the portal and have immediate success. By the way, Riley Leonard has not been great for Notre Dame. I think he first 3 games, he didn't throw a touchdown pass. So it's hard to find these guys. This wasn't, this isn't a team that was a quarterback away. Miami was a quarterback away. They couldn't go into this season with whoever they had. They needed somebody else, and Cam Ward has taken them to another level. By the way, Miami's a team we're going to have to talk about during the week because they're awesome. Okay? But Auburn wasn't a quarterback away. So yeah, you could go spend somebody else's money on a guy that isn't good enough, or you can allocate those resources elsewhere. You can focus on high school development and recruiting, which Hugh Freeze has done. We've talked about it. Great high school 2024 class headlined by Cam Coleman. I was going to say Cam Ward, but Cam Coleman. 2025 class, as we've discussed, 8 of the top 10 players from the state of Alabama are committed to Auburn. Oh, by the way, on top of that, number 5 class in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. So, like, this notion that it's all Hugh Freeze's fault and that he's not allowed to criticize players, I'm just sorry. I'm not a person. I'm never going to blindly always take the side of the players. When Deion Sanders, remember last year, Deion Sanders was asked, how do you improve the O-line? And he said, you go get another offensive line. And I said, I don't blame Coach Prime for saying that at all. I feel the exact same way about Hugh Freeze. I'm not going to apologize. I don't think he said anything wrong. I don't think he did anything wrong. One thing I do think is wrong, this Auburn quarterback play, it's got to get figured out. And it's got to get figured out quick because they got Oklahoma coming to town this week. All right. I'll tell you what, we've done an hour of what I think has just been awesome content. So chat was a little quiet today. I'm a little bit disappointed. Thank you to Paul and everybody who did chime in, but I think we'll just get out of here on that note. It's 8 p.m. Eastern time. I'll be honest, I want to go cook some dinner, get to maybe some Sunday night football and get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, what are you people waiting for? Can listen on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get podcasts. Make sure that you are subscribed. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you are following on social media. Aaron_Torres on Twitter. Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram. By the way, quick shout out to the Tennessee fan base. because every time I post on my new TikTok account, it explodes. You can follow me on TikTok if you're there as well, Aaron Torres Pod. All for today's show. It is time for me to go. Appreciate everybody's support. Tell you what, stay tuned to the channel. Tomorrow we will start our Alabama-Georgia coverage because it's time to look ahead to week 5, and we got a doozy of a game in Tuscaloosa. Right now, though, I am going to get out of here. Again, thank you, everybody, for tuning in on a Sunday. Shout out to Tor and Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. Thank you again to our partners, Collie Puffs. And we will be back. New episode Tuesday afternoon. I think we'll stick with the afternoon time slate. Appreciate everybody.